My name is Sarah Mitchell and I'm 29 years old. The text message came at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Sarah, we need to talk. Can you come over tomorrow? It's about the house. Mom's words glowed on my phone screen as I sat in my studio apartment, surrounded by thrift store furniture and instant ramen containers. What my family didn't know was that I'd been getting similar messages. Not from them. From my lawyer, my financial advisor, and the real estate agent who'd been helping me with the biggest purchase of my life, their family home, the $2.5 million Victorian mansion where I grew up, the same house they were about to lose to foreclosure, the same house I'd secretly bought 3 days earlier. When my family found out who their new landlord was, my phone exploded with 73 missed calls and a voicemail that made my mother cry for the first time in 15 years. But what happened when my older brother Kevin showed up at my door demanding answers? That's when everything I'd been hiding for 5 years came crashing into the light. If you're watching this, please hit subscribe and let me know in the comments if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. I read every single comment, and your stories help others feel less alone. Let me take you back to where this all started. 5 years ago, when my family decided I was the failure. The comparison started early in the Mitchell family. Kevin was the golden child who went to Stanford, married his college sweetheart Amanda, and landed a job at Goldman Sachs straight out of school. My younger sister Jessica became a lawyer by 25, bought a penthouse in downtown Chicago, and posted about her success on Instagram daily. Then there was me, Sarah, the art school dropout who worked at a coffee shop and lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment above a laundromat. Sarah's finding herself, Mom would tell her friends with that tone, the one that said she'd given up hope but was trying to be supportive. Not everyone can be a high achiever like Kevin and Jessica. At family dinners, I sat quietly while Kevin talked about his latest business deals, and Jessica complained about which luxury vacation she couldn't decide on. When the conversation turned to me, it was always the same. "How's the coffee shop, Sarah?" Dad would ask, barely looking up from his steak. "It's fine," I'd mumble. "Maybe you should think about going back to school," Mom would suggest. "Community college has some nice programs." Community college, for the daughter who'd spent 4 years at the Art Institute of Chicago before throwing it all away to work in food service. What they didn't know was that I hadn't dropped out because I was failing. I'd left because I'd discovered something that would change my life forever. Cryptocurrency. It was 2019, and everyone thought Bitcoin was just for computer nerds and criminals. My roommate Jake had been mining Ethereum in our dorm room, his computer running 24/7, making sounds like a jet engine. "This is the future, Sarah," he'd said, showing me charts that looked like mountain ranges. "In 10 years, this will be worth more than gold." I thought he was crazy, until I started researching. I spent 6 months learning everything I could about blockchain technology, smart contracts, and digital assets. I used my student loan money to buy my first $500 worth of Bitcoin when it was trading at $8,000. By the time I dropped out to work at Brew and Bean Coffee House, I had $15,000 in crypto. My family saw failure. I saw opportunity. The coffee shop was perfect cover. Minimum wage job, visible struggle, living in the cheapest apartment I could find. Meanwhile, I was trading digital currencies during my breaks, studying market patterns between customers, and reinvesting every profit. "Sarah can't even afford a proper apartment," Jessica would whisper to Kevin at family gatherings. "I feel so bad for her." I'd overhear them talking about me like I wasn't there, like I was a charity case they had to tolerate. "We should help her," Kevin would say. "Maybe I could get her an entry-level job at my firm." "She'd never last," Jessica would reply. She doesn't have the drive. Some people just aren't meant for success. Some people just aren't meant for success. That phrase haunted me through every 6 a.m. coffee shop shift, every night spent analyzing crypto markets, every family dinner where I pretended to struggle while my portfolio grew. By 2021, when Bitcoin hit its peak, my secret investment account had grown to $1.2 million. My family had no idea. The house had always been the symbol of Mitchell family success. Dad had bought the Victorian mansion in Lincoln Park back in 1995 for $400,000. It was his pride and joy, the physical proof that he'd made it from his working-class childhood to upper-middle-class comfort. The house was everything. 7 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, original hardwood floors, and a garden that Mom spent every weekend tending. It's where Kevin brought Amanda for Sunday dinners, where Jessica hosted her law school graduation party, where every major family milestone happened. It's also where I was reminded weekly that I didn't measure up. Kevin, you and Amanda should consider moving into the guest wing after you have kids, Mom would say over dinner. This house should stay in the family. What about Sarah? Jessica would ask, not because she cared, but because she enjoyed watching me squirm. Sarah will find her own path, Dad would say diplomatically. This house needs someone who can maintain it properly. Someone who can maintain it properly. Translation: someone with money. The irony was killing me. While they debated which successful child deserved to inherit the family legacy, I was sitting on enough cryptocurrency to buy 3 houses like theirs. But I kept quiet. I had a plan. The plan was simple. Stay invisible until I was ready to reveal everything. Let them underestimate me while I built something they couldn't. Ignore. I moved my crypto investments into traditional assets: real estate, index funds, tech stocks. By 2022, my portfolio was worth $2.8 million, and I was earning more in passive income than Kevin made at Goldman Sachs. I also started my own business, Mitchell Digital Consulting. It sounds boring, but I was helping small companies navigate cryptocurrency adoption and blockchain integration. My clients thought they were hiring some hotshot consultant. They had no idea I was the broke girl who served their morning lattes. I worked from my laptop at the coffee shop, taking calls in the storage room, running a 6-figure business between espresso shots. Sarah's been working a lot of double shifts lately, I'd overhear Mom telling Jessica. I think she's finally taking responsibility. Double shifts. If only they knew I was closing million-dollar deals during my bathroom breaks. The business grew fast. Tech companies in Silicon Valley started calling. I was consulting for 3 Fortune 500 companies while wearing a coffee shop apron and pretending to worry about rent. By early 2024, I was worth $4.2 million. And that's when I learned my family was broke. The discovery happened by accident. I was having lunch with my friend Marcus, who works in commercial real estate, when he mentioned a property that was about to go into foreclosure. Beautiful Victorian mansion in Lincoln Park, he said, scrolling through listings on his phone. Owner defaulted on a second mortgage. Bank's going to auction it next month. He showed me the address, 1247 Maple Street. My childhood home. Marcus, I said carefully, can you get me more information about this property? The details were devastating. Dad had remortgaged the house twice, once in 2020 to cover Kevin's wedding expenses, again in 2022 when Jessica needed money to start her law practice. The monthly payments had become impossible. Dad was 3 months behind, and the bank had filed foreclosure papers. My parents were about to lose everything, and they hadn't told any of us. That night, I called my financial advisor. Jennifer, I need to buy a house. Fast. Sarah, we've talked about this. The market is crazy right now. Maybe wait 6 months. It's not negotiable. I need to buy 1247 Maple Street in Lincoln Park, whatever it takes. There was silence on the line. Jennifer had been managing my portfolio for 2 years, but I'd never made a demand like this. Sarah, that property is in foreclosure. It'll go to auction. You could pay way more than it's worth. I don't care what it costs. The next 2 weeks were a blur of lawyers, bank meetings, and paperwork. I outbid 3 other investors, paying $2.5 million for a house the bank had valued at $2.2 million. I wanted to be sure no one else could take it. The closing was scheduled for Friday, March 15th. My family still had no idea what was coming. That Tuesday night, Mom's text came through. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you come over? Tomorrow? It's about the house." I stared at the message for a full minute. Tomorrow, they were going to tell me they were losing everything. Tomorrow, they were going to ask for help from the daughter they'd written off as a failure. Tomorrow, I was going to tell them I'd already solved their problem. But first, I wanted to hear what they really thought of me. I texted back, "Sure, Mom. What time?" Her response came immediately. 6 p.m. Just family. No outsiders. No outsiders. Even in crisis, I was barely considered family. If you've ever been overlooked by people who should believe in you, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to prove your worth to family? Your stories inspire me to keep sharing mine. The family meeting was scheduled in the formal dining room, the same room where I'd been lectured about my lack of ambition countless times. The same room where Kevin and Jessica's achievements were celebrated, while my struggles were analyzed like a medical condition. I arrived at exactly 6 p.m., wearing my usual thrift store clothes and carrying the coffee shop smell that had become my signature. Mom answered the door with the smile she used when she was trying to stay positive despite being disappointed. "Sarah, sweetie, come in. Everyone's already here." Everyone was Kevin, Jessica, and Dad, sitting around the mahogany table like a board of directors. The serious faces, the formal seating arrangement, the way they looked at me when I walked in, like I was about to be fired from a job I didn't want. "Sit down, honey," Dad said, gesturing to the chair at the far end of the table. The seat farthest from him. The position of least importance. I sat down and waited. Kevin cleared his throat. He'd always been the family spokesperson, the one who delivered difficult news because he had the most business experience. "Sarah, we need to talk to you about something serious. Our family is facing a financial crisis." I nodded, trying to look surprised. "What kind of crisis?" Dad's face went red. Even admitting financial problems was humiliating for him. "I made some poor decisions with the house. Took out loans I shouldn't have taken." "We're going to lose everything," Mom whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "The bank is foreclosing. We have 2 weeks." Jessica leaned forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "We've explored every option: bankruptcy, loan modifications, selling assets. Nothing works. The numbers don't add up." I sat quietly, watching my family reveal their desperation. The same people who'd spent years making me feel small were now smaller than I'd ever seen them. "Sarah," Kevin said, "we know you don't have much, but we're hoping you might be able to help somehow. Even a few $100s would—" "A few $100s?" I interrupted. "For a house worth $2.5 million?" Dad flinched. "We're not asking you to save the house, sweetheart. We just need help with moving expenses, security deposits for rental security deposits. They wanted their broke daughter to help them move into an apartment after losing their mansion." "How much do you need total to keep the house?" I asked. The family exchanged looks. Jessica answered, Sarah, the total debt is $347,000. That's not. I mean, none of us have that kind of money liquid right now. None of us. Including me, obviously. Kevin's tied up in investments, Mom explained quickly. Jessica just bought her condo. We're not asking anyone to sacrifice. What if someone could pay it? I asked quietly. Dad laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Sarah, honey, we'd need someone to write a check for nearly $350,000. Tomorrow. That's not happening. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents I'd been carrying all week, waiting for this moment. Actually, Dad, it already happened. I slid the papers across the table. The deed to 1247 Maple Street, with my name on it. The room went completely silent. Kevin picked up the papers first, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been panic. This says, Sarah Mitchell, owner. Jessica grabbed the documents. This has to be fake. Sarah, this isn't funny. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The screen showed my account balance. $1,847,293. It's not fake, I said calmly. I bought the house on Friday. You're not losing it. Mom's face went white. Sarah, I don't understand. How could you possibly? I have money, Mom. I've had money for years. The explosion was immediate. What do you mean you have money? Kevin's voice cracked. You work at a coffee shop. You live in that awful apartment, Jessica added. You can't even afford a car? Dad just stared at the deed like it might disappear if he looked away. I can afford a car, I said. I choose not to have one. I can afford a better apartment. I choose not to live in one. I chose to let you all think I was struggling while I built something you told me I'd never be capable of. The questions came fast and angry. Where did you get this money? Is this legal? Why didn't you tell us? How long have you been lying? I held up my hand for silence. The same gesture Dad used to use when he wanted to speak without interruption. The room went quiet. I started investing in cryptocurrency 5 years ago. I built a consulting business. I'm worth over $4 million. Jessica's mouth dropped open. Kevin's face turned the same red as Dad's. While you've been calling me a failure, I've been earning more money than all of you combined. While you've been worried about my future, I've been securing yours. Mom started crying. Real tears this time. Not the polite tears she cried at weddings or graduations. Sarah, why didn't you tell us? Because you never asked. You never wondered if there might be more to my story. You decided I was broke, and you treated me like I was broken. I stood up. The documents still scattered across the table. Kevin, remember when you offered to get me an entry-level job at your firm? I was consulting for 3 companies that do more business in a day than Goldman Sachs does in a month. Kevin's face went pale. Jessica, remember when you said some people just aren't meant for success? I bought this house with cash. No mortgage, no payments, just a $2.5 million purchase like it was a cup of coffee. Jessica couldn't speak. And Mom? Dad? Remember every family dinner where you worried about my future? I've been financially independent for 3 years. I could retire tomorrow and live comfortably for the rest of my life. Dad finally found his voice. Sarah, if you had all this money, why did you let us worry? Why did you watch us struggle? Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing to offer. The room was silent except for Mom's quiet crying. And what I learned, I continued, is that you only value me when I can solve your problems. You didn't love me when you thought I was broke. You're not going to love me now that you know I'm rich. You love what I can do for you. That's when Kevin lost it. This is insane, he shouted, jumping up from his chair. You're our sister. Family helps family. You had an obligation to help us. Like you helped me? I asked quietly. When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing? Not how work was going or when I was going to get my life together. When did you last ask if I was happy? Jessica tried a different approach. Sarah, we know we haven't been perfect, but this is our family home. You can't just own it. It's not right. Why isn't it right? Because it's Dad's house. It's been in our family for 30 years. And now it still is. I'm family, aren't I? Dad stood up slowly. Sarah, what do you want from us? It was a fair question. What did I want? I want you to see me, I said simply. I want you to acknowledge that you were wrong about me. I want you to admit that you treated me like a charity case because it made you feel superior. We never... Mom started. You did. Every family dinner, every phone call, every time you introduced me to your friends. This is Sarah. She works at a coffee shop. Never. This is Sarah. She's figuring out her path, or this is Sarah. She's building something. Always the job title that embarrassed you. The truth was settling over the room like fog, thick and uncomfortable. Jessica tried to recover. Okay, we made mistakes. But you lied to us for years. You let us think you were struggling while you were secretly rich. That's not healthy family behavior. Neither is treating your daughter like a failure because her success doesn't look like yours. I picked up the deed and put it back in my folder. Here's what's going to happen. You can stay in the house. All of you. For as long as you want. Their faces brightened with relief. But you're going to pay rent. The relief disappeared. Market rate rent for a 7-bedroom house in Lincoln Park is $8,500 per month. You'll pay me $4,000. Kevin's business brain kicked in immediately. That's actually below market rate. I'm not trying to profit off you. I'm trying to teach you something. Dad looked confused. What are we supposed to learn? That I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm not the family member you can ignore until you need something. I'm your landlord now. We have a business relationship. Mom's tears started again. Sarah, please. We're family. Family shows up for each other, Mom. Family doesn't wait until they need money to care about someone's well-being. I walked toward the door, leaving them sitting around the table with the deed copies. I'll have my lawyer send over the rental agreement. First month's rent is due on April 1st. Jessica called after me. What if we can't afford the rent? I turned back one more time. Then you'll have to figure something out. Just like I did when you all thought I was broke. The aftermath was swift and predictable. My phone started ringing before I even got home. First Kevin, then Jessica, then Mom, then Dad. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages told the story of my family's real priorities. Kevin. Sarah, we need to discuss this rationally. As a business matter. Jessica. You can't just destroy our family over money. This is emotional manipulation. Mom. Sweetheart, please call me back. Let's work this out. Dad. Sarah, I'm proud of you, but this isn't the way. Proud of me. Now he was proud of me. After I'd solved their biggest problem and they realized I wasn't the failure they'd thought. I didn't call anyone back that night. Instead, I sat in my studio apartment, the one I kept because it reminded me who I really was, and thought about what came next. The next morning, my landlord called. Sarah? This is weird, but I have someone here asking about your lease. What do you mean? Your brother Kevin? He says your family is worried about your living situation. He wants to know if you're behind on rent. Even after everything, Kevin was still trying to position himself as my rescuer, still operating under the assumption that I needed saving. Tell him my rent is paid through the end of the year, I said. And tell him my lease is none of his business. That afternoon, Jessica showed up at the coffee shop. She waited in line like a regular customer, ordered a cappuccino, and asked if we could talk privately. Sarah, this whole thing has gotten out of hand. I handed her the coffee and rang up the next customer. I'm working, Jessica. What do you need? I need my sister back. You never lost your sister. You lost your image of your sister. Jessica glanced around the coffee shop, clearly uncomfortable being seen in my work environment. Look, I'll admit we underestimated you, but you have to admit you deceived us. I lived my life privately. That's not deception. You let us worry about you. I stopped what I was doing and looked at her directly. When was the last time you worried about me, Jessica? Really worried, not just felt superior. She couldn't answer. Because I can tell you the last time you actually helped me. Never. You've never once offered me money, a job referral, or even a couch to sleep on. Your worry was just judgment with better packaging. That evening, Dad came to my apartment. I'd never seen him in my building before. He looked around my small space with what might have been new understanding. Sarah, I owe you an apology. For what, specifically? He sat down heavily on my secondhand couch. For not seeing who you really are? Who am I, Dad? You're successful, independent, smarter than I gave you credit for. Those are things I accomplished. Who am I? He struggled with the question. After 29 years, my father couldn't describe me as a person, only as a collection of achievements or failures. You're determined, he finally said, patient, strategic. It was progress, but it still hurt that he was discovering basic facts about his daughter's character after 3 decades. Dad, I don't need you to be impressed by my money. I need you to love me whether I have it or not. I do love you. You love successful me. You didn't love broke me. That's conditional love. He was quiet for a long time. How do I fix this? I don't know if you can. The rental agreement arrived at the house the following Monday. I'd written it myself, with help from my lawyer. Standard terms, fair conditions, and one clause that my family probably didn't expect. Tenant agrees that landlord's personal life, financial situation, and business activities are private matters not subject to tenant inquiry or comment. Kevin called me immediately. Sarah, this clause about not discussing your finances, that's not normal. It's perfectly legal. You've spent 5 years commenting on my finances. Now you don't get to. But we're family. Family respects privacy. Landlords enforce it. The first month's rent was due April 1st. I wondered if they'd actually pay or if they'd assume family status trumped business obligations. On March 30th, Kevin transferred $4,000 to my account. On April 15th, Mom called. Sarah, honey, can we talk about the rent? Maybe we could work out a payment plan. The rent was due 2 weeks ago, Mom. I know, but Jessica just started her practice, and Kevin has some investments that are tied up. Those sound like personal problems. The lease is a business agreement. But you're our daughter. And you're my tenants. The silence on the phone was heavy with the weight of changing dynamics. If the rent isn't paid by Friday, you'll receive a formal notice. After that, it's a legal matter. Mom started crying again. I don't understand what happened to you. I learned business from Kevin and legal boundaries from Jessica. I'm applying their lessons. Friday came and went. No payment. Monday morning, they received the notice. Jessica called within an hour. Sarah, you can't evict us. This is our family home. It's my property. You're behind on rent. We'll pay. We just need more time. How much time? Maybe 2 weeks? I'd been tracking their finances since the revelation. Kevin's salary could cover the rent alone. Jessica's new practice was already profitable. They weren't broke. They were testing boundaries. Jessica, you have the money. Kevin has the money. You're not paying because you think family status exempts you from business obligations. That's not true. Prove it. Pay today. The payment arrived within 3 hours. If you're dealing with family members who take advantage of your kindness, let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to set business-like boundaries with people you love? Your experiences help others navigate similar situations. 3 months into our new landlord-tenant relationship, patterns started emerging. My family paid rent on time, but they treated every payment like a personal favor they were doing for me. Kevin would text me rent receipts with messages like, "Another month taken care of for you." Jessica would mention the payments at social gatherings. "We're helping Sarah with her investment property." Mom would call after each payment to check if I needed anything else. They still didn't understand. They thought they were helping me by paying rent for their own housing. The breakthrough came in July. Mom had been gardening in the backyard when Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, came over to chat. I only heard about this conversation because Mrs. Patterson called me directly afterward. "Sarah, dear, I had the most interesting talk with your mother today." Mrs. Patterson had known our family for 20 years. She'd watched me grow up, seen me struggle through my parents' disappointment, witnessed years of family dynamics. "Your mother was telling me how worried she's been about your financial situation, how the family is helping you out with some rental property investment." I cringed. Even to the neighbors, Mom was spinning the story to maintain their image as my supporters. "So I told her something I probably shouldn't have," Mrs. Patterson continued. "I told her I'd seen you meeting with real estate agents, lawyers, people in expensive suits. I told her you'd been getting mail from investment firms for years." What did she say? She didn't believe me at first. Then she got very quiet. "Sarah, I think your mother is starting to realize she doesn't know you at all." That evening, Mom knocked on my apartment door. She never visited without calling first. "Sarah, can I come in?" She sat down and looked around my space with different eyes. Not pity this time, but curiosity. "Mrs. Patterson said some things today that confused me." "Such as?" "She said you've been meeting with financial advisors for years. She said you get mail from Charles Schwab and Vanguard." I waited. "Sarah, how long have you been wealthy? Define wealthy. How long have you been able to buy a $2.5 million house without blinking?" "About 3 years." Mom's face went through a series of expressions: shock, hurt, confusion, and something that might have been admiration. 3 years. You've been coming to family dinners, letting us worry about your future, listening to us offer you help you didn't need. For 3 years. Yes. Why? It was the first time anyone in my family had asked me that question without anger behind it. Because I wanted to know who you were when you thought I had nothing to offer. Mom was quiet for a long moment. "And what did you learn?" "I learned that you loved who you thought Kevin and Jessica were, more than you loved who you thought I was." Tears started forming in her eyes. Real tears, not the performative ones from family meetings. "I learned that your love was conditional on success. That your support was based on potential, not on just me being your daughter. Sarah, I always loved you. You loved the idea of me. You loved who you hoped I'd become. You didn't love who I actually was. But you weren't actually struggling. You were pretending." "I wasn't pretending anything, Mom. I was just living privately. You assumed I was struggling because I didn't look successful in the ways you recognized. She wiped her eyes. How do I fix this? I don't know if you can, but if you want to try, it starts with seeing me as a whole person, not just as your successful daughter or your disappointing daughter. I want to try. It was the first conversation I'd had with my mother in years that felt honest. The changes were small at first. Mom stopped asking about work and started asking about my interests. She noticed that I read financial journals and asked me to explain cryptocurrency to her. Kevin took longer to adjust. His identity as the family's financial success story had been shattered, and he didn't know how to relate to me as an equal rather than someone he needed to help. Jessica was the most resistant. She'd built her self-image partially on being more successful than her older sister, and my revelation had destroyed that foundation. The real test came in September. Kevin called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and it's hard for me to ask. What's going on? Amanda and I are trying to buy a house. We're looking at a place in Evanston, but we're $50,000 short for the down payment. I was wondering. He wanted to borrow money. From me. Kevin, are you asking me for a loan? Yes. And I know how weird this is, given everything that's happened. What's the interest rate you're offering? He was quiet. Interest rate? Kevin, you work in finance. If you're asking me for a business loan, what are the terms? I didn't think of this as a business loan. I thought of it as family helping family. Family helping family goes both ways. When have you helped me? Another long silence. I mean, we're paying rent? You're paying for housing. That's not helping me. That's meeting your obligations. Sarah, I don't know how to do this. Do what? Ask my little sister for money. And there it was. The real issue. Kevin couldn't psychologically handle needing help from someone he'd always seen as needing his help. Kevin, I'm not your little sister who needs taking care of. I'm a successful businesswoman who you're approaching for a loan. I know that now. Do you? Because you called this family helping family instead of a business loan between equals. He sighed. What would the terms be? Hypothetically? 6% interest, 5-year payback, with the house as collateral. That's actually better than the bank's offering. I'm not trying to profit off you. I'm trying to establish that this is a business relationship. Kevin took the loan. He signed papers, made monthly payments, and treated it like the business transaction it was. It was the healthiest financial interaction we'd ever had. Jessica never asked for help. Instead, she started including me in social events, introducing me to her lawyer friends not as my sister who works at a coffee shop, but as my sister Sarah, she's in tech consulting. The shift was gradual, but real. They were learning to see me as a person rather than a problem to solve or a disappointment to manage. But the biggest change came from Dad. In October, he asked if he could take me to lunch. Just the two of us. We met at a restaurant in downtown Chicago, somewhere neutral, away from the family home and my coffee shop. Sarah, I've been thinking about something you said. About loving who you actually are versus who I hoped you'd become. And I realized I don't know who you actually are. After 29 years, I know your achievements and your struggles, but I don't know your dreams, your fears, what makes you happy. It was the most emotionally intelligent thing my father had ever said to me. So I want to ask, who are you, Sarah? Not what do you do, or how much you've accomplished. Who are you? I thought about it for a moment. I'm someone who believes in quiet success. I like solving problems behind the scenes. I'm happiest when I'm learning something new or helping someone without them knowing I helped. Dad nodded. That explains a lot about the house situation. I'm also someone who needed her family to see her worth before she could show them her achievements. And we failed at that. You did. But you're trying now. We talked for 3 hours. Dad told me about his own fears of failure, how he'd projected his anxieties onto his children's achievements. I told him about the loneliness of being misunderstood, how it felt to be loved for who people wanted me to be, rather than who I was. It was the first real conversation I'd had with my father in my entire adult life. As we were leaving, Dad said something that surprised me. Sarah, I'm proud of you. Not because you're successful or because you saved our house. I'm proud of you because you became exactly who you wanted to be, even when nobody understood it. It was the kind of pride I'd been waiting for my whole life. By December, our family dynamics had completely shifted. The house was still mine, but it felt like home again. Not because of ownership, but because of understanding. Kevin and Amanda were saving for their own place but weren't in a hurry to leave. They'd started asking me for business advice, treating me as a consultant rather than a charity case. Jessica had referred 2 clients to my consulting business. She'd also started dating someone she met through my network, a tech entrepreneur who respected her legal expertise. Mom had enrolled in a cryptocurrency investment course. She wanted to understand the world I'd built my success in. Dad had started reading financial journals, not to check up on my investments, but to have conversations with me about markets and trends. The family dinners were different now. Instead of Kevin and Jessica dominating the conversation while I sat quietly, we actually talked to each other. About ideas, about goals, about things that mattered to all of us. One Sunday in December, as we were cleaning up after dinner, Mom pulled me aside. Sarah, I need to tell you something. What's up? I've been going to therapy, talking about how I treated you, how I made assumptions instead of asking questions. I hadn't expected that. My therapist helped me understand something. I was so afraid you'd fail that I treated you like you already had. I was trying to protect myself from disappointment instead of supporting you through challenges. Mom. And I need you to know, I'm sorry. Not sorry that I didn't know about your money. Sorry that I didn't know about your dreams, your plans, your whole inner life. She started crying, but these tears were different. They were tears of recognition, not self-pity. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to hide your success from us. I'm sorry I created a family where love felt conditional. I hugged her then, for the first time in years, without feeling like I was consoling her disappointment in me. I forgive you, Mom. But more importantly, I like who you're becoming. Who am I becoming? Someone who asks questions instead of making assumptions. Someone who loves people for who they are, not for who they might become. Christmas morning was the first time in 5 years that I felt like I belonged at my own family gathering. We exchanged gifts in the living room of the house I owned, but that felt like ours again. Kevin gave me a first edition of The Intelligent Investor. Jessica got me a leather portfolio engraved with Sarah Mitchell, CEO. Mom and Dad had framed a photo of me at the coffee shop, but with a plaque that read, Building Dreams, One Day at a Time. They saw me now. Finally, completely, and without conditions. But the best gift was Jessica's toast at Christmas dinner. I want to say something about Sarah. For years, I thought success meant making enough money to impress other people. I thought achievement meant doing things that looked good on social media. She looked at me across the table. Sarah taught me something better. Success means building something meaningful, even if nobody notices. Achievement means becoming who you want to be, even if it doesn't look like what other people expect. She raised her glass. To Sarah, who was successful long before any of us were smart enough to see it. The whole family toasted. Kevin added, "To the sister who saved our house and our family." Mom said, "To the daughter who taught us what unconditional love actually means." Dad finished, "To Sarah, who never needed our approval, but gave us the chance to earn hers." As I sat there, surrounded by family members who finally saw me as I really was, I realized something important. I hadn't bought their house to save them. I'd bought it to save myself, to prove that I mattered, that I had value, that I couldn't be dismissed or overlooked anymore. But in the process of demanding their respect, I'd accidentally taught them how to love better. The house was never really about the house. It was about belonging, about being seen, about proving that quiet success was still success. And now, for the first time in my adult life, I belonged exactly where I was. The story doesn't end there. In January, I made another announcement to my family. I'm quitting the coffee shop. This time, their reactions were completely different. "What's your next move?" Kevin asked, genuinely curious rather than worried. "Are you expanding the consulting business?" Jessica wondered. "Do you need any support with the transition?" Mom offered. They were asking about my plans, not trying to fix my problems. "I'm opening my own coffee shop," I announced, "in Lincoln Park, 3 blocks from here." Dad grinned. "Competition for your old boss?" "Partnership, actually. I'm buying him out and expanding to 3 locations." The business launched in March. Mitchell Coffee and Consulting. During the day, it's a coffee shop. In the evenings, it transforms into a co-working space for entrepreneurs and small business owners. My family helped with the opening. Kevin handled the financial planning. Jessica took care of the legal paperwork. Mom designed the interior. Dad managed the construction contractors. For the first time in our family history, we were working together instead of in competition. The grand opening was packed. Customers from my old job, clients from my consulting business, neighbors from the old neighborhood, and family members who were finally proud to be associated with my success. Mrs. Patterson came by with a congratulatory bouquet. "Sarah, dear, I always knew you were building something special. I just didn't know what it was." That night, as I locked up my own business for the first time, my family was waiting outside. "Group photo in front of your shop?" Mom asked. We took pictures together, all of us smiling real smiles, not the forced smiles of family obligation, but the genuine smiles of people who actually enjoyed each other's company. As we walked back toward the house, my house, our home, Kevin asked a question that surprised me. "Sarah, do you think you'll ever move back into the house? I mean, as a resident, not just the owner?" I thought about it. Maybe someday, when it feels like home instead of a place where I have to prove myself. Does it feel like home now? I looked at the Victorian mansion where I'd grown up feeling inadequate, where I'd been underestimated and overlooked, where I'd learned to hide my success to avoid changing family dynamics. Now it was the place where my family had learned to see me, where we'd all grown into better versions of ourselves, where love had become unconditional. "Yeah," I said, "it feels like home now." 6 months later, I moved back into my childhood bedroom. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. The coffee shop was thriving. The consulting business had expanded internationally. My investment portfolio was approaching $6 million. But more importantly, my family had become people I actually wanted to spend time with. We still had family dinners every Sunday, but now they were conversations between equals. Kevin asked my advice on investments. Jessica sent me potential clients. Mom and Dad treated me like an adult daughter they were proud to know. The rental agreement had expired, and I hadn't renewed it. The house was just home again. One evening in September, exactly 1 year after the family meeting that started everything, we were all sitting in the living room after dinner. "Sarah," Jessica said, "I have a confession." "What's that?" "I used to be embarrassed by you. When people asked about my family, I'd talk about Kevin's job and my career, and I'd mention you as briefly as possible. It hurt to hear, but I appreciated the honesty. Now," she continued, "you're the first person I mention. My sister Sarah, who built a multi-million-dollar business while working at a coffee shop and saved our family home without any of us even knowing she could." Kevin nodded. "Same here. You're the most interesting person I know now. You always were. I was just too stupid to see it." Mom added, "My book club friends are so impressed when I talk about your businesses, but I'm not proud of you because you impress other people. I'm proud because you're exactly who you wanted to become." Dad smiled. "You know what I tell people about Sarah now?" "What?" "I tell them she's the smartest person in our family, and it just took us a while to be smart enough to realize it." As I looked around the room at my family, the people who'd spent years making me feel small but who had eventually learned to see me clearly, I realized something profound. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's giving them the opportunity to be right about who you really are. My family had called me broke while I secretly bought their house. But the real secret wasn't the money. The real secret was that I'd always been exactly who I was meant to be. It just took buying a $2.5 million house to get them to notice. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment about your own experience with family expectations or hidden success. Have you ever had to prove your worth to people who should have seen it all along? How did you handle being underestimated by the people closest to you? Remember, your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Sometimes the people who love you most are the last ones to understand who you really are. But when they finally do see you, really see you, that recognition can heal years of feeling invisible. You don't have to buy a house to prove you matter. You just have to keep being exactly who you are until the right people notice. And to those still hiding their success from family members who don't appreciate them, you deserve to be celebrated for who you are, not just for what you can provide. Your story matters. Your achievements count. And someday, the people who matter most will be smart enough to see what was always there.